My name is Allison Bamcat. I'm a painter and illustrator out of Los Angeles, California. I wanted to walk you through beginning to end of creating an illustration in Adobe Fresco. So I'm just starting off with a sketch layer, and I'm going to pick a lighter color, just any random lighter color for my undersketch. And I know that when I draw on the iPad, I like brushes with a little bit of texture, like colored pencil. So I'm going to go through the dry media brushes and maybe the sketching brushes to find one that speaks to me. You can see how the color kind of builds up on itself as you sketch, and that's something that I really like in a brush. So I think I'm going to go with this one. And now I'm just going to erase this so I can start my sketch. I want to do like an axolotl, but off the top of my head I'm not totally sure what they look like, so I figured I would go into Safari and look up some reference images in Google. Once I found one that I like, I can go back into Adobe Fresco and then swipe up from the bottom and actually just add that reference to the right side of my screen so I have something to draw from. Once I've figured out my undersketch, I create a new layer and then trace over my undersketch with a colored pencil in a darker color. This helps me define my line work so that I know where to color in. In this stage, I really like to play around with the flow and smoothing options on the brush to see kind of what works best and what flows the best with my hand and for the surface that I'm working on. Here's where I hide my undersketch and begin picking colors for my character. And then just using a larger ink brush, I begin to block out the shapes on different layers. As I'm coloring in, I like to go back into my tools and play around with smoothing and flow to see kind of what works best. Each brush has its own kind of behavior, and I think it's worth playing with those functions to find what works the best. So for the background, I pick kind of like a water lagoon type color, and then I start adding highlights onto the smaller rocks. And then using the sketch pencil, I start adding a little bit of shading to see how I want to shade my objects. Then I go into some of the more painterly brushes and start playing with texture in the background. Adding a little bit of shading just using the erase tool. So you can see here I'm playing around with masks. What I was really looking for was the lock transparency tool because I wanted to preserve my pink axolotl and only work within that shape. So what I ended up figuring out was you just use the lock transparency tool and then you can, you know, scribble all over the page and it'll only affect that pink shape. So you can do that for each individual layer. Using various dry media brushes, I'm just slowly building up a lighter color to show a little bit of highlight and shadow, but just working very softly. So for my shadows, I want to use cool colors since the background is a cool color. See that those cool low lights are what's making the character look like they actually are existing in the background, as opposed to just using like a darker pink or a darker red. I'll use blue tones to create highlights and reflective surfaces in the eyes as well. Now I want to add some little textured freckles, so I'm just going to take any kind of dry media brush and begin to speckle my character. Then using the regular pen brush, I'm going to start adding the gills. Here I'm picking pretty neutral tones for these glyphs or lucky charms, I call them, that are floating above the character, because I really want the character to be the focal point of the image. Here you can see I started my signature and then I realized that I accidentally bled a little bit onto the eyes, so I went back and redid my signature after hitting edit undo a few times. And the last thing that I do on all of my pieces is sign my initials and the year and my little sprout. And here is our completed axolotl. Thank you for following along with me. Definitely make sure you find me on Instagram at Allison Bamcat. My website is bamcatart.com, and I just wanted to shout out a big thank you to the Adobe Creative Residency. Thank you.